Would you just give us, just to rewind for a second, and give us the 30 seconds on why did you decide to go the route that you did versus the IFC? I mean, that seems to be the route of like, hey, they would have taken care of, presumably they would have taken care of theatrical and you know, maybe cable and...
Yeah, no, everything, you know, domestic in Canada, North America.
So why not go that route?
I chose that company because I liked Ryan Werner, to be honest. That's the main reason, and I thought the films that they continue to, you know, release are the best. Like they curate, you know. It's we came to verbal terms, as you do, at, you know, the day after Sundance or something like that, and a month later the contract came in, and I had to recover my terms. You know, the contract said something very different than what we talked about. They were basically, you know, beholden to a deal that they made with Blockbuster after we made a deal, and it invalidated what we agreed upon. And it was more important for them to honor their new agreement with Blockbuster than it was with me just being a single film, and so I had to suffer the consequences of that, and I wasn't willing to. And then that was one term. There was a number of things, but what I realized was I hadn't signed a contract at that time, and I you know, I had a lot of leverage, therefore, because they still wanted the film, and they were very hot on it.
They had announced they had the film.
Because that's what happens.
No, I'm saying, so you had leverage, yeah.
I had leverage, and I hadn't signed a contract, and they liked the film, so they really had plans for it, you know, as far as I could tell. And but I couldn't get my original deal points back when I still hadn't signed a contract. So what was going to happen when I signed the contract for the next 20 years?
Yeah.
So I wasn't willing to. The money was so small, and I spent, you know, I spent $700,000, and I probably would have made about 50 grand off of the. You know, it was actually a gross participation thing that I had, but it was a very small gross participation. And so I wasn't willing to, you know, give it up for 20 years. This was my child, and the 12 years ago, DVD. You know, I bought my first DVD player for $600, and there was like 20 titles available, and that was only 12 years ago, 1996,
right,
or 13 years ago. And you know, look what happened to DVD in those 12 years. It was phenomenal. It transformed the industry. It was a huge, surprising cash cow for the film industry. It changed the nature of theatrical and everything. It made independent film viable. All these things it did. So what's going to happen with the internet in the next 20 years? I don't want someone else to own that. You know. Plus, the most important thing of all, I really believe there's no future at the moment in taking independent film, I mean, giving it to a distributor. You will always lose your money. And I don't think it's necessarily true that you will lose your money if you distribute it yourself. So I wanted to learn. This was, for me, a disposable project. It was very small risk. I had very little to gain because they were offering me so little. So I could almost completely fail on this and be in the same position I would have been with IFC, but I would own the title, and I would have learned how to distribute a film. And that's, you know, that's the way you make a film. You fail, and then on your first attempt, I made a short that I failed on, but it informed how I made the next thing. And I want to distribute my future work, and I will know how to do it in a much more sophisticated way.
So you kind of are segueing into one last area that I want to explore, and then we'll open it up for questions from the great black hole out here. We assume there's an audience, but we can't really see you. So, I mean, the conventional wisdom is that, you know, there's a generational shift that's happening here from people who buy DVDs, you know, which is a great thing for filmmakers, someone who's willing to pay $20 or $25 or $30 for DVD, to, you know, the generation of, you know, kids in college and in their 20s who really want to download a movie, and, you know, they're happy to watch it on their iPhone or happy to watch it on their laptop or their, you know, internet-connected TV that they'll be buying, you know, this year for Christmas. Are there any, you know, can we talk about some of the success stories or the interesting failures that we've seen so far in terms of people trying to really rely on the internet to generate revenue that's equivalent to DVD, or, you know, that, I guess, to generate serious revenue?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Christian.
Christian, why don't you go first, and then.
Yeah.
Well, you know, there's been a couple of, I mean, I was thinking of the Snag Films, Hamptons Film Festival. I don't necessarily consider that a failure so much as a very interesting experiment, which was taking a film festival platform, premiering 2 films and then premiering it in a window on the internet at the same time that the film festival is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could imagine something like that on a grand scale, where a film is perhaps at its most, people are most excited about it and it's being most buzzed upon at a film festival. If there's a festival happening online at the same time, there could be geographic restrictions on that release. There could be calendar window restrictions on that release. But I think that there's definitely something there, and I think that's a very nascent idea.
Well, Snag, I mean, for people who aren't familiar with it, it's basically kind of an ad-supported streaming system, right? So the filmmaker is making money based on a share of the advertising revenue, and I think there's also kind of a link to buy the DVD if you like the movie. They haven't yet, you know, it's been up and running for 5 or 6 months now, and they haven't yet sort of shared any data that I've seen about, you know, here's how much you can make if you're the most popular film on Snag.
No one's doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact of the matter is people. This is what I traffic in every day. We release films on Hulu, iTunes, Amazon VOD, Snag, Jam, Juice, all these people, Babelgum, YouTube. Now that they're doing feature-length films. You know, and the fact of the matter is obviously the first question I get is, well, how much money am I going to make? And there's a couple of things that go along with that question. First of all, projections are bullshit no matter who tries to give you them. If, like, you know, the biggest distributor in the world says, we think you're going to make this much money, it's a guess. We don't really want to be, we're not a distributor and we're not in the guessing business. We're in the educated guessing business, and we try to collaborate with the filmmakers as much as possible. But the situation is that data, just there isn't a critical mass of information yet and examples yet for that information to be made public, because it's all relative. You know, if I told you, hey, you could make this, I'm just throwing this out there, has no basis in reality, but if I told you, hey, you could make $100,000 in a year by putting your film on iTunes or Amazon VOD, to some people that would be great. To other people, that'd be a huge failure. So the other thing, too, is that info is just not public like Nielsen ratings are and box office stats are and record sales are. There's just no system yet to calculate that. Maybe once they do, once that evolves and once it becomes more relevant, that info will be more public. But to answer your question, yes, there is real revenue coming out of this.
Well, would you talk about one example? I mean, you know, whether it's Purple Violets, the Ed Burns film, or another one where, you know, where either you could say, yeah, the filmmaker was really happy with how much they made, or, you know, the filmmaker was disappointed.
Absolutely. So, first of all, I'll speak to that in 2 points. One is, don't be afraid of free streaming, ad-supported free streaming. A lot of filmmakers we work with are like, well, I get iTunes and I get, you know, Amazon because it's pay-per-view. I get VOD, it's pay-per-view. But why would I put my movie on Hulu or YouTube or Snag? Because there is money there. There is actually money there, and it doesn't cannibalize. I mean, I don't think that's going to change. But what we actually see in some cases is this. I'll give you a real quick case study. We put Times of Harvey Milk, the Oscar-winning documentary, on iTunes and Amazon VOD, and it was doing great business. It was the most, I can give you rankings. It was the most popular documentary rental on iTunes, most popular documentary rental and independent film rental on Amazon VOD for like a good month or two. We decided, okay, you know what? Let's play with this a little bit. Let's put it on Hulu. Guess what? It was the most popular film on Hulu, Amazon VOD, and iTunes for the same week. You could watch it for free on Hulu, but people didn't care because it's all about consumer taste. It's just like watching movies on cable television. Some people will pay the premium to get HBO without commercials. Some people are fine not getting HBO and watching movies on Comedy Central or TNT with commercials. It's all about consumer taste. Consumers know their taste better than any of us do, so it's about giving them variety. That's one point in terms of revenue. The other is this film called On Broadway. This is a film that we're representing for Ancillary at Cinetic. We were trying to find it a good DVD deal. It's a cute comedy. It's kind of like My Big Fat Greek Wedding meets Good Will Hunting. And it's, you'll have to see it. And anyway, it's got some good cast. It's got Joey McIntyre from New Kids on the Block. It's got Eliza Dushku. It's got Will Arnett, Amy Poehler. Couldn't really get a real traditional deal because, you know, it's not a risky, edgy, arty movie. It's a very safe, independent movie. And there was a couple of DVD offers, and the filmmakers, much like the two filmmakers here, the filmmakers saw the offers and said, this is BS. They're like, why would I sign my film away for X amount of years to, you know, this DVD company that may or may not play ball with us, may or may not let us in on the process, to make no money. So we said, okay, well, what about doing something with what we're doing at Cinetic on the digital side? They said, sure. So made the film available exclusively on Amazon VOD, did a lot of press and publicity around it, made it available on iTunes, made it available on CreateSpace because they wanted a DVD component, which is this disc-on-demand component. They still own the film, and guess what? They're making pure profit. Now, maybe not on their budget, but they're making pure profit on their release. They're not spending a dime on releasing their movie. All the money that they're getting from this release is coming right straight back to them, and it's doing really well because this is a film that actually works because it's got great cast, and it was hard to market in a traditional sense, and so they're, I mean, for all intents and purposes, very satisfied.
Well, is like $5 million, Will?
Who pays
we
for
do
the
it.
advertising? So the
There's no
filmmakers-
advertising. Advertising
You said that when you put it on, one of the things you did a lot of
publicity
around it.
Yeah,
Who paid for the
we
publicity?
do that. No, that's all part
So
of our
that's
fee.
in-house.
That's part of our representation is that we do publicity and marketing in-house. We don't take any costs off the top at all with regard to
Can
that.
I ask one thing on the Harvey Milk? Was
Sure.
that tied in because of milk?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that was like.
Yeah, no,
You
so
gotta have a
obviously
hook.
it was kind of a perfect storm. I brought up the Harvey Milk example more so to use it as an example
Of an older film.
No, well that, but also streaming versus VOD
I see.
not
Right.
really cannibalizing. That if people want to see a film, they will see it the way they want to see it.
So, what are the numbers? I mean, like, is it five? I mean, when you're saying
Trust
it's
me,
doing
my
really
job would be
well,
so much
is
easier
it
if I
$5
could-
million or is it $55?
I can't tell.
What? I mean, is it? I mean, because
Or somewhere in the middle?
You know, like iTunes.
Somewhere in the middle.
If you get $7,000 from iTunes, that's, I've heard, great.
But you're gonna get $7,000 theatrically releasing your film in New York and LA.
No, you're going to spend $200,000.
Well, that's right, and get 7,000 on the box office on the opening weekend
Yeah.
for a small
Right.
independent film
Right.
on 4 screens.
Right.
So
Well,
Right.
and I guess one of
Right.
the keys too is I've talked to some documentary filmmakers who've
Yeah.
gotten their movies on iTunes, and it kind of gets lost in iTunes, right? Like you literally have to specifically search for that movie's title.
That's why you have to name your film with an A.
Yeah, Aardvark. Name your movie Aardvark.
Aardvark. That's my next film.
No, I know.
swear to God.
Actually,
So
I was on a panel with somebody. Sorry, real quick. This guy named Nicolas Chartier, who we were talking about VOD, and he said we had this film on VOD. It was called Warbirds. It did horrible business. We're thinking of changing it to Birds of War. But
But I mean, do you have any leverage over these guys, Hulu and
So
iTunes,
here's
in
the
terms
thing.
of saying, hey, we'd love to be on the front screen for
So
a week, for 2 weeks?
Yeah.
for...
So here's the thing. So our added value. I mean, yeah, there's aggregators out there. There are people who are going to say, hey, give me a cut, and I'll put your movie on this platform. That business model exists, and it's not a very ideal business model because what's the point? It's like, yeah, you can sign away your rights to a company to put your film on iTunes, but if they're not going to actually get behind it and get people to notice it, what's the point? And that's what we do. I mean, we actually activate social networking, web video, blogs, traditional interviews. I mean, hell, we got a New York Times review for a movie we did once, but that's not going to happen very often, let me tell you.
No, but that's a very important thing.
That was
Yeah.
the Wayne
Very,
Wang,
very
right?
important.
Yeah.
That's a good
yeah.
example.
We,
the
we,
Wayne
we
Wang.
released a Wayne Wang film in conjunction with Magnolia, but we were in the driver's seat. We were very happy they agreed to work with us. We released it on YouTube, and this is a film that bypassed theatrical, DVD, cable to be released on YouTube, and it got a lot of attention around it. That's not necessarily going to happen for every single film on YouTube, but what was really exciting for us was it showed people it's okay, and it's not necessarily, and that's just one segment of that film's life. People would say, well, how's that movie going to make significant amounts of money? Well, first of all, what's significant? And second of all, it's not over for that film. That film's going to be out there. That film's going to be on cable. That film's going to be on DVD. It may not. That film got some theatrical bookings as a result of all the noise and attention that was built around it.
But do you think that review, they ran that review because it was Wayne Wang and an
Yes.
established
Yes.
filmmaker?
No, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
so part of this conversation, I mean, in the future is, we have to be meeting with the New York Times and say, okay, if these things are changing, why is it a different group that's reviewing a film theatrically than a film that's going on any of these other platforms?
Here's the thing that drives me nuts about that exact point, because there's nothing that people like me and the people at IFC VOD would love more than to get a little more press love for people for a film like On Broadway that premieres on Amazon VOD or iTunes. And what's scary is the fact that more people read the New York Times outside of New York than in New York City. But for some reason, they will only review films because, not for some reason, we know why, but their mandate is we will review it if it's a new
If it
release,
opens.
if it opens theatrically in New York City. Hopefully, there will come a time where they're reviewing the films that are accessible to the widest audience at that moment.
Well, the
That's
one
gonna
point, sorry, I was just going to say, the one point that I would make about that is that, I understand that there's the importance of newspaper and magazine reviews when you're, playing in art house cinema in New York or LA or Atlanta or wherever. But I would say if you're trying to sell DVDs or you're trying to sell downloads of a movie, probably online publicity is more valuable
Well, yeah,
because
you
there's
have a
that
link.
There's that direct link that
Click
says,
away.
hey, I'm going to take you to, the Good Dick website where you can buy the DVD or, you can, we'll link you to iTunes.
The thing I always say is that online marketing for theatrical releases is faulty. I mean, you're asking people who are plugged in to their BlackBerry or their Facebook account or YouTube to unplug for 2 hours, get in the car, drive to a theater, sit there, and it just doesn't. If you think about it, it's an analog versus digital strategy. It can work for big Hollywood releases, but for a smaller film, it just it's great to be able to act. If people want that immediate satisfaction, it goes along with Christian's point about making something available right away after a festival. I mean, people want to know it. They want to know it now. And guess what? If it's not available, they've got a million other things to preoccupy their time with.
Corey, did you want to jump in there? Sorry, I didn't mean to.
I just
step
think
on
it's a precedent-based business in a lot of ways. So, with Wayne Wang's movie, of course he could get that attention because it's Wayne Wang, but maybe that opens the door, maybe just cracks the door open a tiny bit, where in the future you can get that kind of publicity for a movie, maybe from a first-time filmmaker, maybe if they got into Sundance or there was something external that validated that particular project. I think that's sort of the slow incremental change that is going to lead to kind of,
Wayne Wang was the Rosa Parks of online distribution.
So I feel like we're getting into one question here, which I just want to ask and maybe answer real briefly, and then your questions are up in a minute. But it seems like we're talking about, okay, what is the marketing that's going to support DVD sales and downloads? And my sense is that internet and blogs and Facebook groups can be really powerful in promoting those two distribution avenues. But do we know yet what marketing is going to support, getting butts in seats at a theater if it's not, a quarter-page ad in, the alternative weekly newspaper in, Phoenix or wherever the film's playing? Or, are you seeing some stuff start to replace traditional print advertising?
In terms of documentaries, yes, because documentaries usually have a subject that's, you can go to a non-film audience, and you can find your audience through the topic of the documentary. So that's an easier thing to kind of find audiences and get butts in seats by going to groups or any
who have
number of
mailing
ways.
lists or whatever.
Right, and who have an interest in the topic. I think I don't know the answers at all to particularly American independent narrative film. That's a film audience that goes to see those films, and to go beyond the film. I mean, we know how to get to what we think is the film audience, and each theater kind of knows its audience and hopes that they'll book a film and their audience will trust them and come see it. But it's hard to know how to use the internet, how to use it if it's not star-driven and there's no topic per se within the film. So,
there are groups, there are films, if it's a Jewish-themed film,
Right,
for example,
right.
there is a structure set up. I mean, MJ, Connie, we've all released that kind of film where you literally are getting your core demographic through, the Jewish community centers across the U.S. And they have a complete structure. You go, you do a Q&A, you screen in that market, you tie in with the Jewish Film Festival. I mean, every city in the U.S. has a Jewish film festival. There's Jews in Park City. There's a new temple. I'm just saying that is a core
The Tupelo,
audience
Mississippi Jewish Film Festival.
I mean, I was like, who knew there were Jews in Salt Lake? But that is a group. If you have a Jewish-themed film, you can gross $1 million easily without taking out huge ads.
I mean, look at Fireproof.
Right.
Samuel
It was
Goldwyn's
Christian,
biggest release ever in the history of the company, and it's a Christian film.
Right.
But
And
that
it was a
It's done
survey.
over 30 million.
But this goes back to that same question of who's your audience and how are you going to get to them, and when can you start thinking about that? And for anyone who's writing a script or has an idea for a script, the time to start thinking about it is now, because what if you don't have a Jewish theme movie, and what if you have a love story? That was what we had with Good Dick, and it had some themes that enabled us to kind of work with organizations. We had a sexual abuse kind of undercurrent in the movie, but it's not so clear, unless you have a documentary or something that really is very, very niche oriented. So marketing. Start thinking about it.
Well, we are just about out of time. I want to thank you for all the great questions. Please help me thank these panelists.